Uh, I wonder what Tom is. He was supposed to be here now. Holding an episode today, aren't we? Well, guess I'd better call him real quick. Hey.
Oh, hey, Marty, how are you? Yeah, there's going to be a slight problem with me being home for that Talking WoW recording today.
Oh, is everything all right?
It seems my Hearthstone messed up, and it's put me here in Canada.
Oh no, we were supposed to do like a special Winter's Veil episode. What do we then do?
Well, you're right, it is Winter's Veil, so we could put out that really, really special episode that we recorded as a gift for all our wonderful Talking WoW viewers. Wait, is that a bear? Welcome to Talking WoW, the podcast where we talk about World of Warcraft. My name is Tom. Over there is my co-host Marty. Hey Marty, how are you doing?
Hello there. No fancy intro for me today. Let's move on. There's more important people on this podcast.
There absolutely is, because today we are going to be talking about the new War Within novella wrote by Adam Christopher. And we're not just going to sit here and talk about it between you and me, Marty. We actually have Adam Christopher here with us on the show. Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, hey, thank you very much for having me on. I get to talk about Warcraft for once. This is amazing. I can't wait.
It was so exciting. Adam is a New York Times best-selling author who has written books from the worlds of Star Wars, which if you're watching on YouTube, you can see a very impressive display behind. Stranger Things, Doctor Who, Dishonored, and of course, why we're here today, World of Warcraft, which I believe is your first foray into the franchise. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. I've always wanted to write World of Warcraft. I always said that my three kind of big franchises, IPs I want to write for was Star Wars, Doctor Who, and World of Warcraft.
And you did it.
I've hit all three now, so yeah. I'm.
What's next, Adam? What's next?
What's bigger than those three things? I don't know.
That's it. There isn't anything bigger.
That's it. No, I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, you're done. Roll credits. There we go.
Yep. See ya.
So before we get started into I was going to say the hard-hitting questions. We're probably just going to start with a hard-hitting question, actually, Adam. And, it's the most important question. Are you for the Horde or are you for the Alliance?
Well, I haven't always. I have, for 99.9% of the time, I've been Horde. Which, seeing the Alliance banner behind one of these video streams worries me slightly by saying that. But
yeah, we have to actually end the interview now. That was it.
This is it. Yeah,
failed the first question there. Marty's going to cut us off.
Sorry, failed.
I will say that I have an Alliance banner, but I consider myself bifactional. I also play for the Horde, so don't worry too much.
It's like my first character ever was actually Night Elf Rogue. And then I discovered Taurens. And of course, Taurens being the greatest race in the World of Warcraft, I played a Tauren for years and years and years. But also because I really like not just the gameplay of Warcraft, but the lore and the storytelling. I play or have played both sides to just see the quest lines and the experience from both sides, because in some expansions it's sort of been a unified quest line. Storyline, and in some expansions it's been quite separate. So some of my greatest memories, well, not even memories, I still go back and play it. It's like, the Alliance storyline in Battle for Azeroth. I think it's amazing. I love, Borealis and all those zones. Good. Yeah.
Like BFA gets some hard rap, I think, sometimes, but I think the initial story and how that was set up, maybe towards the end it could have been better. I'll just say that.
Yeah, sure. But the zones are so good.
Yeah.
It's like, Warlords of Draenor. I played both Horde and Alliance and that, again, to see the storylines. That's an expansion which used to get kind of talked down quite a lot, but the questing is so good. For both Horde and Alliance in that expansion. Which is like, it's like, there's obviously with Warcraft, there's two parts to World of Warcraft. There's storyline and lore, and there's gameplay and mechanics. And like sometimes an expansion is stronger on one than it is on the other. Yeah. So to answer your question, Horde, and I play Horde at the moment, but I do have some Alliance characters knocking about.
It's good enough for us, Adam, to continue the interview, I think.
Good. Past phase 1.
So how did you get into World of Warcraft, and also how long ago did you start?
So I played Warcraft since Warcraft 1, Orcs versus Humans, or whatever it's called, Orcs and Humans, Orcs versus Humans, which is what, 1994, I think?
A few years ago.
Anniversary. Yeah. So I was 94. Man, I was either at late high school. I was at high school. And I had a really ancient...
It's scary when we start looking back, isn't it?
Yeah. I was going to say ancient computer. It's ancient now, of course, but when I got it, it was brand new. But I had like a Macintosh Performer 5200, which is one of the worst computers that Apple ever made. But it ran Warcraft. And I played Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3. And Warcraft 3... This is pre-World of Warcraft. I expanded the memory of that computer from 8 megabytes to 40 megabytes. So I put in a 32 meg, whatever it was, which cost a fortune, like absolute fortune. I put that in just so Warcraft 3 would run better on this absolute piece of crap computer. But yeah, and then so World of Warcraft was from launch. So I'm from New Zealand, and back when Warcraft launched, we were on the US servers. There was no Oceania, I don't think, at that time. So I think it was probably, I say launch, which was for US was November 2024, 2004. But I think it was probably more like January or February 2005. And this is where my first character was a rogue, Night Elf rogue. But then I moved to the UK in 2006. And of course, I didn't want to play on US servers and have a huge amount of lag, especially in those days. Like 2006 was nearly 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And,
you're going to have a high ping. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I obviously switched and created a brand new kind of European realms characters.
What was that like starting all over again? Did you feel a bit devastated? Because, even though it was like a year in classic WoW is a long time.
Yeah. I think, I'm trying to remember when the Burning Crusade came out. Because probably the Burning Crusade.
2007?
It wasn't late as that. Gosh. That was where I really got properly into World of Warcraft in terms of like progression. Before that, it was just like, because also I used to play consoles, with PlayStation, Xbox and things. So Warcraft was just one game that I played. So for the classic era, it wasn't really about progression. I never raided or anything like that. It was just, gameplay. So like creating a character on a European server was fine because I didn't have any particular attachment to, it must have been the Night Elf Rogue. I don't recall any other characters I had created. So
if it had been a Tauren though at the time, you probably would have been like, I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah, so it'd be like, no, I'm going to play with a ping of 2,000 milliseconds. You forget how slow internet connections were.
Oh yeah.
Back then, but it was a long time ago. But certainly Burning Crusade, joined a guild for the first time. Discovered Taurens. I actually played a enhancement shaman Tauren because nobody else played them. Like that class, I think, was the least played class because nobody knew what they did or what the whole point was. So I was like, I'm quite contrary. So I was like, yeah, I'll play enhancement. And
I think even 20 years later, I still don't know how enhancement shamans work.
Yeah. Well, back in those days, also, Burning Crusade was very much classic with a few extra bits bolted on.
Yeah.
So it turned out that for raiding, I was actually quite useful because I used to have Wind Fury Totem and things, which suddenly improved everybody else, which is the whole point. Enhancement, shaman, it enhances.
Yeah, it's in the name, isn't it?
Yeah, which is also almost like the ancestor, the kind of augmentation evoker.
Oh, I love that. Love that.
Because that, again, is a role that augments the rest of the party. But yeah, so I don't particularly know why I got hooked, but Warcraft is just a world that I have loved kind of forever. As I said, going back to Warcraft 1. And I remember being blown away. Like Warcraft 3, I absolutely loved. And then in World of Warcraft, you play these characters. Like you can create a druid. And it's hard to describe what a kind of, just a completely out-of-body experience. You create a character and you're walking around inside Warcraft, inside a game that I loved. So yeah, it's all ancient history now, of course. Like 20 years.
Yeah, and speaking of that, fast forward, from your first steps into World of Warcraft to 20 years into the future, Adam, we're sitting here right now and you've just released Heartlands, which is a novella for the War Within, the latest World of Warcraft expansion. That must be quite surreal in a way as well, that from those, humble beginnings of your Mac computer installing RAM to, being part of the franchise yourself now.
Yeah. It's like, okay, so yeah, like you said, I've written things like Stranger Things and Star Wars and Dishonored, which is a video game series. I did 3 books for that. And I did some books for Elementary, which is that modern day Sherlock Holmes TV series. All of which have the kind of moments of like, wow, this is really cool. And it's really happening. It was when I was away in New Zealand for a bit and then I came back, so I missed the kind of Heartlands launch. I opened BattleNet and the launcher, and my story was there in the launcher. That is the most incredible, surreal thing. And then I played the quest line through in the War Within. Again, I was behind by a couple of weeks because I'd been away. And then I got to the point where Jaina and Thrall come back from their voyage with the ships coming in. And I'm like, that's my story.
Yeah.
That is, they've gone off and they've had this adventure and they come back. And it's real and it's in the game and it's actually part of Warcraft. Which is
and we were all like, where have they gone? And Adam knew.
Oh,
Adam knew where they were.
I knew all along where they had gone. But like I said, everything has that kind of, obviously Star Wars is a big thing. It has moments where I'm like, wow, I got to create this or do this, or even Stranger Things. But yeah, Warcraft, I think because Warcraft, you're in the world, you are.
Yeah, you're part of it.
You're in the world. You're part of it as a player. So to be a player and a fan of Warcraft and to then write a story in the game is just what is happening. It's we're
the lifeblood of that.
I cannot imagine how that must feel. But one thing that I just as a player remember was that I remember reading the book about Medivh and that took place in his castle in Karazhan, and then actually get to go in there as a player. I guess that's sort of like the miniature version of what you experienced, and where you actually get to add to the whole experience.
Yeah, it's very hard to describe. Especially because Warcraft, because you're there, and it's like with Star Wars books, you can watch the movies and the TV shows and whatever, and not touch any of the books or the comics or anything, or you can be really selective, and it doesn't really matter because if you know something about what happens in the book or not, it kind of all still makes sense. It's the same with Warcraft in that if you don't read Heartlands, then there's nothing that it impacts the game itself. But the fact that it's a part of the game, you see them come back in the ships in the harbor, and it's like, I know where they went. It's cool. I'm a fan of Warcraft, so I'm like, this is really cool.
Yeah, it is, and not to go too deep into spoilers here, but I feel like you've also started to spin a few plates towards the end of the novella as well to, foreshadow potential things in the future, which I know we absolutely cannot get into, but that again just must be very exciting, just to, you're fleshing out this world that you started as a player, and now you're, creating the lore for it as well, which must be just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a collaboration absolutely with the game team. Because you can probably appreciate, and we can talk a bit more about this later, but they plan out so far in advance, and it's really complex storytelling. So, I'm in that position where I know things, which is like, I know things, more so than Star Wars or anything. Like, I know what's going to happen, I know what's coming. So, like, part of me is like, this is spoilers. This is like, I'm spoiling myself for future quest lines and future expansions. But at the same time, it's like, well, I've got to know this stuff because I've got to write some of it. So, it's good though. I enjoy it.
No, just now that we actually are on the whole, collaboration with Blizzard part, how is it actually, if you can share, I don't know how much you can share, but how is it actually writing a book for Blizzard? And I assume that's like an outline for the story or something, or how much is you? If you can talk a little bit about that, maybe.
Yeah. So going back to what I said before, it's like they've got things planned out in great detail, because you can imagine with a game the scale of Warcraft, the things they have to build for future patches and expansions is like, it's enormous, and like it's beyond any of my technical understanding of how you make a video game. So in light of that, they really need stories to tell very specific things which lead to other things. It's different, when you do kind of this kind of franchise or IP or license work, like always, go back to Star Wars, but like there's different levels of things. With Star Wars, it's like, tell a story here, and it's very loose, and I can do an outline and stuff. With Warcraft, it was like, this is the story we need to tell, and these are the things that are going to happen in that story, because you've got to get characters from A to B to C and onwards. So for Heartlands, there was I knew the general idea initially, and then they sent a very detailed, not an outline, but it was like the beats of the story. Like, they've got to do this, and I've got to go here, and I've got to meet these characters, and you've got to introduce these characters. And this kind of thing's going to happen. So like, it's not an outline, but it's definitely story beats. And in combination with that, they also sent all this material for future stuff in the game. So I knew where I had to tie my story into stuff that will happen later. And then from there, I wrote the outline. So it was still, once they've given me all that, like, kind of go for it and do an outline. So I wrote an outline. And like, the reason you do that kind of thing for tie-in fiction is because they have to make sure that it fits everything. It's got to be what they wanted. It's got to be within the universe and within the storylines. But also, this is the point where, like, it's my story to tell, and this is where I kind of like jazz it up. So I said to my editor, Chloe, it's like, here's my outline, I've jazzed up a little bit. And by that I mean, they, as the game developers and the creators and the lore people, they know what they need to do, but like, not necessarily how to do it or how to get characters to certain points. And that's why they could do that, they wouldn't need writers. So they're like, well, here's my jazzed up outline, and then kind of a bit of back and forth and kind of fixing things up and just smoothing things over, and then go for the draft. But really, it's quite cool because it's a team effort. They've got so many people working in game on the lore and the storyline. And you kind of got people like Chris Metzen kind of almost directing the whole thing from kind of higher up. So there's this sort of unified storytelling, which then my story kind of fits into. It's like a kind of piece of the jigsaw puzzle. It's like, this is a bit that goes on the side. So it's been really good and like really amazing team to work for. And just the amount of lore and mythology is incredible. I've been playing Warcraft since the beginning, and think that I know the lore quite well and the story, but like there's so much. It's so
there's so much.
So
you only
deep.
have to pick up one of the Chronicle books, and then you're suddenly oh wow, there is way more here than I thought.
Yeah. I was kind of looking down there because I've got the Chronicles on the shelf, and I was like, I was like, those are my precious reference books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, Heartlands features some major WoW lore characters. So what is it like writing a story which includes such icons as Jaina Proudmoore and Thrall?
Yeah, that's kind of like, there's almost like pressure that goes with that, because obviously at the moment, at least, they are some of the main characters of Warcraft.
Yeah, they're probably like two, like you think of Warcraft, who do you think of? Thrall and Jaina is probably two, maybe Sylvanas, comes to the Lich King, but like they would be up there in the top 5, I would say, as the biggest characters in this franchise.
Yeah, definitely. It's a weird thing also, because as a player, they are characters that you meet in person, if you know what I mean. Like you go and for years we've interacted with them,
and you look up to them as well, don't you? Like as a player, you're like, oh, Thrall, Jaina, you're a big deal.
Yeah. So with them, it was a matter of like just making sure that I captured their characters properly, which is a combination of sort of the big history of those characters. Even little things like, Thrall that's not his name. His name is Goel. And so just remembering little things like that. And, Jaina is kind of Lord of the Admiralty or something similar to that. But like little character bits that you kind of got to get in and get right. And it's helped by the fact that like the in-game performances are so good. Chris Metzen obviously does Thrall. Which is amazing. And the actress who does Jaina, and I can't remember her name at the moment, but
Laura Bailey?
Really, yes, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But they're really good performances in-game. And also, so it's like thanks to the in-game stuff, but also like the cinematics and whatever, you've got to know these characters, for years, and you've seen how they're developed. So with any kind of like tentpole character, no matter what universe I'm writing in, like you got to get them right. My Star Wars book was Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian. It was like two of the most important characters in Star Wars that people have known for years. And it's the same with Warcraft. It's like people have known Thrall and Jaina for years and years and years. So you really kind of have to get it right. And then once you kind of get those characters right, then it all kind of fits together, and you can put in, there's other characters in the Heartlands that are less well known. There's some brand new characters. So if you can get the kind of the main ones right, then it kind of all just fits together.
You talk about that pressure as well, and I have to say, like at Heartlands, I felt so many emotions in such a short space of time, and probably no greater emotion, and I'm going for a little bit of spoiler territory here, is when you put an arrow into Thrall, like a poisoned arrow, and I'm just getting like flashbacks of like Cairn Bloodhoof dying from poison. I'm just like, no, like this can't be happening, Adam. Like you can't kill Thrall.
Well, there's the thing. It's like they're not. If you're considering Warcraft as a world, like as a living Azeroth, it's a mythology. It's some alternate universe which exists. Like they're not superheroes.
No,
they're not invulnerable immortals. And we've seen major characters die and things, so nobody is kind of untouchable. Thrall being one of the lead characters of World War with them, it's probably unlikely that I was going to kill him.
But still, I felt that arrow in me when I was reading that, because I was like, oh.
Yeah. And he was struggling on as he walked across the
that's it. Just
islands. Yeah.
We've all played Plunderstorm. We know what it's like to, take a bunch of hits in Arathi Highlands. It's a tough time,
It's funny. Plunderstorm was useful to get that kind of geography.
Really?
I mean, obviously, you can go and visit Arathi Highlands, no problem. But it's like, because I spent so long grinding Plunderstorm to get all transmogs, it's like, I know every hill, every tree.
Oh, that's amazing.
We know about Goshek Farm, don't we? You know, that's iconic,
Well,
one might say.
Yeah, and again, it's like, I love putting stuff in that is meaningful. Not necessarily, like, it's not Stormwind. It's not a huge part of Warcraft, but like, it's a place. So, yeah, I mean, I do that kind of thing as a fan. I kind of like stick stuff in that. If you do get a reference or a character or whatever, it doesn't matter. I put in a load of, it got taken out, I put in a load of NPCs from Arathi Highlands, from Stromgarde, a lot of the kind of quest givers and some named characters. That took them all out. It's like, okay, fair enough. There's a point where it borders on fan fiction where you're just like, no, stop it, hold back.
Yeah, and I guess like there's such a short space of time to tell the story as well that like the spotlight has to be like mainly on those main characters and some of the fringe characters surrounding that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because and it was a short, a finite length story, and it had a function, it had a story to tell, and to get the characters to a certain place. So yeah, you got to be efficient sometimes.
And is there a challenge that comes with writing a novella as opposed to like a full blown novel? Is like that sort of a different approach because you only have like obviously a little bit of time compared to a full blown novel.
Oh, definitely. I think it's harder. I mean, I never really wrote or write short stories because they're too hard. It's like, what do you do in that length of time? With a novel, you can be really indulgent and just like, it can be as long as you want it to be, really. And this is the kind of awkward length because it's like, well, it's kind of long enough that you can get into it. But then, especially because, and again, this is part of the whole way it was structured, is like it was going to be 5 10-minute audio episodes. So I wrote it as a novella with chapters, not as a script or anything, obviously, but like I knew that it was going to be available both as a kind of a PDF, which you can download, or this audio, which is going to be formed by Chris. So that was really tricky because like, well, there was a time limit, and you can kind of work out how many words it takes for, a 10-minute thing. And I think like my first draft was actually, the whole thing is longer than it should have been anyway, because I couldn't help myself. I was like, I got to tell the story. The first draft was even longer, and then you've got to start cutting.
We definitely need a director's cut. Just saying. Feel like we need that.
Just try it. Well, it's like it's one of those things. But like you start cutting it, and it's like, yeah, it is actually better. Like, just the whole rule of short fiction is like you come in as late as possible and you get out as early as possible. And although this was, I think it was about 12,000 words in the end. Because it was in those 5 episodes, I really could focus on that. It's like, what does this episode need, and what can I get rid of? Because it's not pushing the story. So I did find short fiction difficult. But it's like when you get it done, it's like it's satisfying. It's like, yeah, I did it.
I think as a reader, just to highlight, I think like all those points were hit so well because we went on a journey in like a very short space of time. And I think there was still, and I must commend you, like there was enough detail there to be, satisfied as a Warcraft player to be like, oh yeah, I can visualize this. I can see everything that's happening. But obviously it's a novella, so there's not much time to tell the story and there's not too much time to develop the situation or the characters more. But I listening to Chris Metzen narrate that as well, it was also powerful and, was a short experience compared to a novel, but it still like hit all these points. And, at the end of it, I was like, oh, this was so satisfying to just, listen to. And for me, you see people talking about, oh, there's no war in Warcraft anymore, or, things like that. And I actually think this is a great reminder to those people that even though like this is not like the Horde versus the Alliance is not at the forefront, of what's going on in the story right now. I mean, we're at peace where, there's been a truce at the end of the Fourth War. But it's a reminder that war, just because the war's ended, it doesn't stop having an impact on people. There's these stories, there's these narratives that are occurring, like the one you wrote, Adam, that, the domino effect of that, the snowball effect, it's there plain to see, and you can see that there are people like deeply impacted by this. And to say that there is no war in Warcraft anymore is just, very dismissive to the repercussions of the aftermath of war. So I just actually thought that was very interesting, because you see those posts on social media, and it's like, oh, it's all rainbows and fluffy things now in World of Warcraft. It's like, it's not. Like, this is happening. This world has been ravaged by war for so many years, and that doesn't just go away.
Yeah, and what I found writing it was that it kind of expanded my view of the whole world, because at the beginning, the kind of the leaders of the different factions come together for that meeting, and it's like, well, most of them don't turn up because, people are panicking about the Radiant Song that everyone's hearing. They've all got their own problems to deal with. Yeah. And we're being players in the game, following kind of the main characters. We're like focused on Zaltath and the War Within, and like, this is Thrall and Jaina, and what are they going to do to save it? But like, Tyrellian's doing stuff in Stormwind and they're having trouble. And, I put in Kira of the Valpera faction. It's like, they're doing stuff. Jaina and Thrall send all these messages out and no one turns up, because the world is actually much more complicated than we see. Which is like, obviously that's logical, because in the game, you're playing a game, and the game has a plot and it has objectives, and you know who the enemy is and things. But it's nice to be able to broaden that view a little bit and see what is going on. Yeah, and so the situation, like you said, the situation right at the Heartlands, this kind of tension that's been growing behind the scenes, that we, because there's other stuff going on. And it's really cool to have Jaina and Thrall get caught up in that kind of thing, away from, it's Zaltath and Azeroth is going to be the story kind of thing.
Well, we talked about Chris, but what was that like, Adam, hearing your words and story narrated by the Warcraft legend, Chris Metzen?
Again, another total out-of-body experience. It's like, I was sent a sample. He read some of it, and I got the sample audio, and I was just like, this is my life now. It's like, he's reading, and he's not just a narrator and a voice actor. He's I'm not quite sure exactly what his job title is, but like, he's one of the producers and kind of directors of World of Warcraft, and like, he gave notes on the outline, on the storyline, and alongside my really amazing editor and stuff. And like, he loved the story, and I was like, oh. Chris Metzen not only knows who I am, but like, he liked my story. It's like,
it's a pretty good place to be.
That's it. It's kind of like job done. It's like, that's it. I've kind of met the requirements, and
hitting
amazing.
all those goals.
So obviously, and not to take away from this novella, which was amazing, but if you could write like a full book, larger book, into any aspect of the World of Warcraft lore, then like specific areas where you would be like, that is something I would write about?
I mean, the problem almost is that like, it's so big. What I really love, and this idea, you could do, because I love, as I said, the Battle for Azeroth Alliance quest side. I love Justvar and that whole kind of folk horror, witchy magic, black magic thing. And it's like, you could do like really cool like folk horror set in Justvar, which is like, it's completely, now, because of where the game's moving, it's completely unimportant. That would move on. It's an old expansion. But it's such a cool zone.
I like this pitch, Adam. I'm just like,
me too.
Like, let's make this have a Halloween special,
Halloween, you could do you could do Halloween, Justvar, Tales from Justvar.
Yes.
That would be good.
Could have a little crossover in-game event, you know, just saying Blizzard, you know, just
I would love to if Blizzard are listening, I would love to hear more about just the Trust in general. So I think this is a grand idea. I'll hope this happens. Just to end it out real quick, as a writer, how do you get into like the headspace for writing? Do you have any rituals, anything where you're like, do you just sit down and write? Do we have any tips for aspiring writers?
Play Plunderstorm? No, that's
play Plunderstorm.
Oh my God, do not play Plunderstorm when you're on a deadline. Oh my God. I'm still traumatized. It's one of those weird things. Like I find writing very difficult. You know, my first book came out in 2011, I think. And it's still difficult. So it's one of those things where like it's pure discipline, really. It's like you just have to, I'm trying myself because I've got something due, which I haven't got to grips with yet. So I'm in panic mode because it's always the same for me. It's just like you just have to type. Like the barrier to being published, people that want to be writers and want to be published and have some kind of career in it, like the barrier is you know, is kind of yourself. And it's not just things like rejection where it's like, you know, you query 100 agents or you submit 100 stories and everyone just says no, so you're like, well, why do I bother? It's like you go, okay, and you keep going. It's like persistence. The secret is persistence. That the persistence, not just in terms of like the big picture, I want to be a writer, I want to get a book published, but like I need to do 1,000 words today to hit my deadline. And if it's something you learn as a writer, and you learn how you work, and you learn what motivates you and what doesn't. And I guess I probably can't explain what it is for myself, but like somewhere I've done it. I've got a bookshelf of my own books, so clearly at some point I know what I'm doing. So I kind of just have to trust the process and trust myself that like I will do it. But yeah, it's the same every single job. You know, it's Warcraft, then it was Heartlands. It was difficult. And I was like, what am I doing? I don't know how to write. I've forgotten how to write. But like I kind of battled through. But I think that's probably healthy, because I think if you come to the point where you're like, I'm such a great writer and it's all so easy and, you know, the world is ready for my genius. That's
honestly,
like
Adam,
I'm
taking some reassurance from this. Just
right,
you know, I think because it sort of reminds us that we are all human and we do have those moments of just pure crisis, don't we? That we're like, how do I get this done? And then somehow, you fast forward to the future and you look back and go, oh, I did it. I did it. You know, what was I panicking about? But we all have those moments where we just
that is me editing this episode afterwards. How am I going to make it in time?
Adam, thank you so much for sharing those wise words and for letting us pull back the curtain a little bit into the Heartlands novella. And just a reminder that Heartlands is out now. It's a 5-part audio. It's narrated by Chris Metzen. There's also PDFs out there. We would highly recommend that you check that out. We'll include a link in the show notes as well to that and to Adam and the rest of his works that you should definitely check out. We've been Talking WoW. We're also on social media at Blue Sky. You can find us on YouTube at Talking WoW. And that about wraps it up. I've been Tom.
I've been Marty.
I've been Adam Christopher.
And we've been Talking WoW.
Thanks for tuning in, champion. Did you enjoy this episode of Talking WoW? If so, why not drop a review on your podcast catcher of choice, or leave us a comment. You can find Talking WoW on
Blue Sky
or YouTube over at Talking WoW. Hope to see you again soon.